How has Tunisian President Kais Saied consolidated personal control over the ship of state? How have Tunisians responded to this new autocracy? Welcome to Connections, the Arab Studies Institute's interview program on current events, policy questions, and new ideas. I'm Mouin Rabbani, and for this episode, we're delighted to be speaking with Mohamed Haddad. Mohamed Haddad is currently a Mason Fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School. For the past decade, he's been a journalist in Tunisia, working for major international media like Reuters, AFP, and Le Monde. He has worked as a media trainer for journalists from across the Arabic-speaking world. In 2015, he co-founded Barr Al-Aman Research Media, an NGO based in Tunisia, whose mission is to create bridges between academic research and journalism. Mohamed Haddad, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to Connections. You're muted.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Mohamed, on 25 July of last year, Tunisia's elected president, Kais Saied, suspended parliament for 30 days and dismissed the prime minister, Hisham Mshishi. These measures were taken in the context of mass anti-government protests and a growing rift between the presidency on the one hand and the powerful Islamist Ennahda party on the other. 7 months later, in February of this year, the suspension of parliament has become permanent. The president rules by decree. The constitution is in the process of being replaced, and prominent opponents have been prevented from leaving the country and are being referred to the courts. Most recently, President Saied this month dissolved the Supreme Judicial Council and effectively took personal control of the Tunisian judiciary. Where did Tunisia's transition go wrong?
It's quite a challenge to identify the point where things went wrong. And here's why. I think that what happened on July 25th didn't happen overnight. The strong move of Kais Saied was a decisive moment, that's true. But the context around the 25th matters as much as the day and the announcement itself. So what we can say is that there has been a consolidation of the political power. And once consolidated, there were some methods and some means some arrangements that were legal and constitutional to justify this consolidated political power. It is important to have in mind what Tunisia looked like 8 months ago in July. This could help us understand how Tunisia interacted and reacted to the announcement.
Yes, so I think that'd be a great place to start.
Yeah. The first point I would like to talk about is COVID and the health situation. It was catastrophic. So there were deaths due to COVID in each family. Each family was having a loss due to that to COVID, and the Tunisian government of Hisham Mshishi had been slow to supply the country with vaccines, and thus the vaccination campaign was very, very slow. Mshishi government decreed a curfew that was perceived as a security measure rather than a health measure. Politically speaking, the relationship between the different institutions of the state was at least execrable, if non-existent.
And sorry, this is the presidency, the parliament, and the government.
Yeah. So politically, the situation was like the institutions were paralyzed. And economically speaking, it was not much better. The country has suffered from COVID, like all the world, but also from the decomposition of the political scene. And the government of Hisham Mshishi has been asking the Gulf countries to postpone the repayment of certain loans, but without success. The same goes for the international financial institutions. Mshishi went to Washington asking the IMF for the biggest and the largest loan of the country's history, but without success either. And on the ground, for Tunisians, inflation was a phenomenon that could be observed at a glance. We could compare the prices rise from 1 week to another.
This is already last year.
Yeah, that was in the summer. Yeah. So today this holds true, but in the summer, I mean, people are used to inflation, particularly for the last decade. we saw things, the prices increasing, but sometimes the change for certain commodities was observable from one week to another. So it was really an end of rain atmosphere. And what was being said in the corridors and the backstage of the institutions was that the situation couldn't last. And the balance of power at that time was in favor of the duo, Meshishi and Ghannouchi, who are the head of the government and the president of the parliament.
And also the head of the Nahda party.
Exactly, the Islamist party. And we couldn't tell what would happen or who would take the initiative. So at that time, as you can see, the context was unstable. So the president's strategy was not to reject the constitution all in all, to do a classic coup, let's say, but to suspend some chapters in the beginning. But this was a ploy. And as you said, the dissolution of the High Judicial Council a few days ago proved it, because in a way, all the chapters of the Constitution today are meaningless. The Constitution is almost, I can get rid of that. The Constitution is obsolete.
And Saied has indicated he wants to introduce a new one.
He does, and there is a whole process going on in this regard, so that he justifies and he anchors his will in a public will. And so there is an electronic consultation, istishara in Tunisia going on, that we can dive in. But as you said, what went wrong didn't go wrong on July 25th. And this is a key point that we have to bear in mind, because one of the, let's say, biggest controversies in last summer and even till today was the misunderstanding existing between the public opinion in Tunisia and the public opinion abroad. People were discovering that democracy was at stake and has disappeared in Tunisia. However, in Tunisia, for those who have been following what was going on for the last decades, the constitution of 2014 has been challenged and was weakened and emptied from its meanings till the very first days. So someone like Beji Qaid Essebsi, the first Tunisian president, regretted the limits of his presidential power. And he, in a way, didn't challenge that power or those boundaries. That's not the case for Kais Saied. What Kais Saied did is that even during the electoral campaign for the presidential elections of 2019, what he wrote in his manifesto was clear. He was basically happy about the prerogatives of the president of the republic. One could say, how come a lawyer like Beji Qaid Essebsi didn't see the opportunities that a constitutional professor as Kais Saied saw at that time? And so the answer is that Kais Saied saw opportunities in the text, saying that hey, look, the president can submit laws to the parliament on whatever topic he wants. So the president is not only specialized in defense and foreign affairs, but also he can rule on whatever he wants. And these were elements of the ruse of ploy that Kais Saied used to justify the fact that he can have a say on whatever topic or sector he wants. And these points are very important in mind. He didn't hide that. 6 months before the elections, in a TV interview, in one of the rarest TV interviews, he said it clearly. The president has a lot of prerogatives and he can do whatever he wants because he has such prerogatives, let alone some tools, like the National Security Council or the state of emergency. So yeah, to summarize my idea regarding where things went wrong, it's been a while that things are going in the wrong direction.
And you're saying we should see July 25th really as the culmination of a number of long festering economic, political, and constitutional issues, rather than kind of a unexpected intervention in the affairs of state.
I think so, yeah. And one important point is that Saied did not create the tools. Mm-hmm. All the tools that he used were created by his predecessors. And so, I mean, I'm not here justifying what he did. I'm just trying to help viewers understand how the responsibility of what happened in Tunisia is not the responsibility of a man that one day gathered enough power to make this breakthrough and take over the whole institutions, powers, etc. There has been a system going on, and within this system, I mean, the opposition to this system existed, but was not organized, or the political parties were okay with the system and were trying to take advantage of it rather than trying to improve it. And that's why I'm really insisting on the tools that were left to Kais Saied. We spoke about the National Security Council, which has been a very powerful tool to Kais Saied. This tool was created 3 years before he took power. It was created in 2017 and under Beji Qaid Sibsi regime. And it's inspired from the US National Security Council. But of course, the political systems are very, very different. And the check and balances, I mean, here in the US, where I am now, are very different from what the country in Tunisia was having at that time and till today. So it's very, in my opinion, it's important to keep in mind that Kais Saied himself is not as important as we would think in this, let's say,
so you see him,
we're in.
Yeah, you're seeing him, if I understand you correctly, almost as a symptom in some sense of a much deeper problem in Tunisian politics and society.
In my opinion, yes, he is. Let's think counterfactually. I would say that if Saied leaves Carthage, the presidential palace of Carthage today, mm-hmm. this the institutions that made the authoritarian regime still alive 10 years after Ben Ali's departure are still there. Yeah. So there would be maybe someone else who would have the opportunity to be an authoritarian ruler. So the issue is that there are some institutions, like the way and the structure of the economic power, the judiciary, the police. These are the pillars of the authoritarian regime, and each decision maker or each president or prime minister has been negotiating with these institutions so that he can try to rule or try to maintain himself in power. So it's important to bear in mind those points, because of course we are focusing today on one individual, but well, I think it's more than that.
And this is, I think, also a very good prelude to my next question, which is to take a look at this a bit more closely. While it's clear that Saied has concentrated power in his hands, it's less apparent why he is doing so. Unlike his predecessors and opponents, Saied also doesn't head a political party. And presumably there is more than a lust for power at play here. So in your view, and given what you've just said, what is Saied's agenda? And what are the main forces within the Tunisian state and society supporting him?
So I think that maybe here again, I'm gonna do a step back in the
Please
past.
do.
It's very helpful to see how things looked like before we get into this weird situation. So in the Tunisia of the 24th of July, Kais Saied was not like on the podium in the polls. There was another political actor who was leading and calling the shots, and basically it had the wheel of the public opinion and the agenda of the debates in the political debates in the country. And this person is Abir Moussi, who is the president of the Free Desturian Party. This woman, she's a lawyer, and she's a personality who openly assumes her affiliation and her attachment to the regime of Zain al-Abidin Ben Ali. And she normalized with the idea of eradicating the Islamist party Nahda. So this person has been like present in the media, over-present in the media compared to her to her way, political way. And she made this idea of getting rid of another casual idea. I'm not here judging if another is good or bad. I'm just trying to make this, how come did this political party that was present and strong during 10 years and existed for 40 years before that, how come it could leave the political stage as if nothing happened? And so the role played by Abir Moussi in normalizing with the idea of eradication and the kicking out of Nahda was very important. So,
and sorry, she's a media personality. She's a head of a political movement, both.
Yes, she's the president of the party called Free Desturian Party. This party had 16 MPs out of 217.
And this is different than the Neo-Desturian Party of Bourguiba?
She claims to be affiliated and to be the direct affiliation or daughter of Bourguiba. However, a lot of other Desturians wouldn't agree with that. So she was the Secretary of State, which is like a deputy minister in Tunisia system in the last days of Ben Ali regime. I mean, in the first years of after January 14th, 2011, after the Tunisian revolution, she was like present, but she was representing an extreme minority inside the political sphere. And she was really, in 10 years, she managed to almost reshuffle the polarization of the political scene. And she was considered as being the strong woman and the person who had more chances to win the elections. So this, in a way, still holds true, because if we think about who is about the most recent polls, we could think about these polls as a tool to answer the question on who is supporting or not supporting Saied. And you will see that Abir Moussi is still present in the polls. So if today Kais Saied implemented his roadmap, we would have elections on December 17th, 2022. And regarding these elections, the Tunisian newspaper Al-Maghrib made a survey and a poll and asking the question to the Tunisian, who would you vote for if elections were held today? And the most striking element is that for presidential elections, Kais Saied would lead with 88%, and he would be followed by Abir Moussi. Yeah, again here, I just want to warn viewers that polls are not regulated in Tunisia. We have seen owners of polling companies take public positions in favor of particular parties, and other polls
follow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and some other polling institutions are like specialized in consumer preferences and have converted to politics. So I'm not saying that they are lying. I'm just saying that we have to
proceed with caution.
Yeah. So let's see the trends and not focus on the percentage as it is.
But I do want to get back to trying to determine what Saied's agenda is, and then figuring out what are the forces supporting that agenda or perhaps sponsoring that agenda.
So what would Tunisia look like if Saied implemented his views of this country? So we would no longer have representative liberal democracy as we used to have. We wouldn't have a legislative, we wouldn't have a parliamentary system, sorry. And what we would have is like elections from the bottom up, where people in what we call in Tunisia, Aimada, which is the tiniest administrative unit. From there, we have almost 2,600 units, Aimadat, as we say it here. And they are very small, like, as you can see, imagine the map of Tunisia, it's just 164,000 kilometers square. So we would divide the country into very small units. And from there, those units would vote for a representative. And then this representative would convey the voices and the aspirations of his people on development to a higher regional institution that would be elected from the people who are elected in the units. And these regional institutions would themselves convey the development and from the bottom up. The parliament would be voted from those people. So it's not a direct election of the MP.
It's a bit like had previously been proposed in the Soviet Union and by Gaddafi in Libya, if I'm not mistaken.
So I'm not a specialist of the USSR nor Gaddafi system, اللجان الشعبية, but this is often the criticism that opponents to Kais Saied would say. But I mean, I don't know to what extent this is achievable, not only politically, but just technically and administratively. Practically, it's like something that would reshuffle all the political system in Tunisia. And there is a very important point that a political scientist, a Tunisian political scientist named Sadri Khiari, wrote in an essay we published in Barr Al-Aman Research Media, that essay, where basically what he points out is that all the mandates in the Kais Saied system are revocable except his mandate, which is something that is, I mean, we could take it as a surprise or as a trick, but basically this person, when he was a candidate, jotted down and wrote it in his political manifesto. But I mean, maybe the issue at a certain point that is that the people, or let's say we the people, we didn't take him seriously. I mean, the issue is not that he's, let's say,
the writing has been on the wall, as you also mentioned this subsequently well-known interview he gave before the elections. Definitely, and that was not the most important point that people focused on here. People were focusing on things like equality in heritage between men and women. People were focusing on, so there was a rumor saying that he was pro-Sharia, so he was asked about that. I mean, there was a lot of points where Saied was let's say, reflecting the image that people would put on him and not see in him. So people would think about him in the ways they would like to think about him, whether they support him or not, and he would just stay as he is, and we wouldn't see his accept the substance of what he is. And people basically didn't believe who he was when he told them what he was.
Yeah, I mean, let me be more, let me put it in another way. I mean, he's quite surprising the way he's acting and the way he is and the way he interacts. I mean, we have no common point to compare with to grasp who he is. And so, yeah, I think there is a misunderstanding in both directions. But I mean, I'm not talking like now, I'm rather talking about what we knew of Kais Saied before his strong move.
Right.
But things are moving really fast these last weeks or months, because today there is no intermediary. There is just Kais Saied ruling by decrees. A few days ago, he dismissed the High Judicial Council, even if it's not as important as we would think about.
But before we get to that, if I could interrupt you to say, we've discussed Saied. Let's also briefly try to determine his primary base of support. Is it the business community? Is it the army and the security forces? Is it foreign powers? Is it a combination of these?
So maybe the polls could answer the question to have a general overview of who is supporting him and who would vote for him. And then we could go, after this individual approach, we could go to organizations and institutions. So, as we said, the polls, in the polls, Saied is leading the presidential contest with more than 88%. But for the legislative elections, Abir Moussi is in the lead, and she's followed closely what the polling institute called Saied's political party. Here we need a disclaimer.
Coincidence, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the president said that he has no party, and he even commented this mentions of Saied's political party that he read in the newspapers. He said, I'm not willing to create a party, and I don't have one. And so I think it's for convenience that the polling institute used this name. So whether it's a coalition, whether, I mean, depending on whether we have ordinary legislative elections or not, if we had one, Saied would be the second, like 35% for Saied's supposed political party, pseudo-political party, and then just the first one is Abir Moussi with 36. The important point is that the intention to participate, the turnout is expected to be decreasing in the next elections. So who are the people, where are the people who would vote for him? The west of the country, on the Algerian border, mainly rural areas, is clearly pro-Saied. We have here in the center west regions where the revolution started from. Sidi Bouzid and Gasserine, for sure, sound familiar with for people who have been following Tunisia. There is also generational divide. The youth and the young adults, so ranging from 18 to 44-year-old, would choose a side, and the elders would choose his competitor. Gender-wise, again, there is a divide. More men would vote for Abir Moussi than for, and not for Saied. The high and middle income classes would choose Moussi, and the poorer would opt for Saied. And education here matters too, because the more educated, the less likely you would vote for Kais Saied. So it's surprising because we have rarely faced such a stark divide in the Tunisian society. For the last elections, we have been seeing like a mosaic of regions, social classes supporting this politician or this party or the other. But today there is like
it's much more clear. Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite surprising.
Yeah.
And now, tell me.
No, I was if we look at his institutional bases of support, where would you locate those?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was heading to. And so there is a very important point here, because rare are the institutions who vocally opposed Saied. They exist, but they are rare. And here's why. Saied was very popular when he made his strong move on July 25th. So you wouldn't oppose someone who is popular. So the least we can say is that some organizations that would have been, that should or would have been vocal, stayed silent. And they were like in a wait and see approach, hoping that he will stick to his commitment to freeze some chapters of the constitution and not knock on their doors. And here I'm, of course, thinking about the High Judicial Council, which is like once the parliament is frozen and the MPs are dismissed, this could or should have been the institution that is the most concerned about its own existence, because it's the next on the list, and also the one that should have been more vocal to oppose what was done.
And since July until, let's say, last week, they have kept their counsel and really not said much. And now, of course, you have a situation where he's effectively dissolved the judicial power and made it his own.
To be fair, the president of the High Judicial Council, Youssef Bouzekher, expressed in communiques his position, the position of the Judicial Council, saying that we have to get back to the constitution and we have to restart or resume the normal functioning of the state. But I mean, was this enough? It's, of course,
apparently not enough to save his own institution.
Yeah, apparently so. And here we have to underline a strategic move from Kais Saied. He didn't dismiss the whole constitution from one day to another. He started by very small steps, and he was weighing the popular and political and institutional support or opposition so that he can measure how far he can go to and how far he can get. And so it started with the parliament, and then he started ruling by decrees, and then people didn't oppose the decrees as much as I mean, the country kept on functioning. There were no general strikes, there were no big moves at the country experienced this last decade. And so he's testing to what extent he can go and how far he can go with his autocratic and authoritarian power.
And does the fact that he's been able to go this far reflect that he maintains significant, not only institutional, but also popular support for his measures? Or is this something that's being imposed by the power of the state, and opposition is considered irrelevant?
So it's, I mean, for me, it's quite hard to assess the popular support of Kais Saied. The facts don't lie, and the fact is that his decrees are recognized de facto by the political, by the institutions of the state. His authority is enforced, and the police obey him. The army, at least, is not disobeying. These are facts that don't lie. The question is, will they today? And the answer is clearly, I don't know. Will they tomorrow? Sorry. And the answer is clearly, I don't know. But what could have, I mean, this idea of having a republic where the constitution would be higher than what people would call the national interest, what they see as being the national interest, is something that like proven wrong, completely wrong. And this was a teamwork. I mean, the constitution has been jeopardized by people for the last decade, for the last 6 years, 7 years. So clearly it was not seen as something that would defend or guarantee the well-being and the welfare of the country and its people, but it was seen rather than an obstacle and something that is no more meaningful, as it was not respected at all. I mean, we killed the constitutions it was a stillborn. I mean, I'm really sorry to say that, because I'm one of the people who believed in the constitutional process and believed that this was more than ink on paper, as we say. But the delays in implementing the High Judicial Council, the struggle of interest of corporate interests for this institution, or even for other institutions like the Constitutional Court, a lot of the delay for local elections. I'm not saying that life would have changed with these institutions enforced in time. No, what I'm saying is that the fact that we didn't respect the constitution is a bigger loss than not having these institutions themselves.
Right.
And that opened door for such moves. And today we are in. I mean, the state is going on, and the affairs are like running, but the continuity, the state continuity could be at stake. Yeah. We don't know what will happen next, but someone could come and say, okay, all this stuff has been unconstitutional, so it's not recognized from me anymore. Even please.
And in such a vacuum, what do you make of the analysis that says Saied's presidency should be seen as kind of a coalition between the army and security forces, Saied's constitutional agenda, and corporate interests, and that these together have managed to get Tunisia to the situation it is today, and have nevertheless also found a fairly significant level of popular support for their agenda, at least so far.
I wouldn't use the term support in the same way for the military and for the police or the security institutions in general as for the popular or the people. I mean, supporting or not supporting Saied when you are a citizen is not a big deal, but supporting or not supporting Saied when you are in the military is
Makes
another
all the difference.
story. Yeah. So there has been, I mean, there was clearly a shift going on that happened in the 25th. But things are not still. I mean, again, as I said it in the beginning, the situation, the atmosphere was an end of regime atmosphere at that time in July 25th. But today, it looks almost the same. Yeah. I'm not here trying to forecast what will happen.
Well, I'm going to ask you to forecast later on in our discussion, but
okay.
But the point is well taken. And on the same subject, let's now look at the opposition to Saied. As you've indicated, when the crisis erupted last year, the opposition to him was seen as weak, fragmented, out of touch, and unpopular. And I've noticed that in the time we've been speaking today, you've barely mentioned Al-Nahda as somehow still being a significant political force in Tunisia. So this leads me to the question of what are the main forces opposing him, and do they have a plan to stop him? Or are they once again, looking at this from a more opportunistic perspective of how it can help strengthen their own interests?
So let me push back on another point. Another has been like calling for demonstrations since July 25th, and the last one was 2 days ago. I'm a bit lost with the time difference, but the last Sunday, there was a demonstration in Tunis with thousands of people, but it was not only called by Nahda, but also by other forces that are against the coup. There is an important point to be made here, which is when Saied called for a demonstration in front of the High Judicial Council, there were hundreds of people and not thousands. But still, there is not a critical mass of people who could make things change yet. Regarding Nahda, maybe that's one of the very interesting points in this last decade, because Nahda, what happened in Nahda and what Rashid Ghannouchi, the historic leader and president of Nahda party, has been trying to do for the last 3 years is exactly what somehow comparable, let me get rid of exactly, it's somehow comparable to what Saied did. Mm-hmm. Rashid Ghannouchi has been trying to stay in power in the Nahda, even if the rules of procedure of his party that he wrote and contributed writing said that he had to leave. Mm-hmm. And he was in a way killing his own party. The historical leaders were leaving one after the other, and
due to internal differences within a Nahda.
Huge differences, and the only question was at that moment and still today, what does it mean to have Rashid Ghannouchi as the head of the party? I mean, he lost his political aura and his political, let's say, symbolism, or he was not anymore someone who calls the shots or who is important in the political stage, but he was someone who is spoiling the political stage. Even this idea that he ran for the legislative elections in Tunis, and he became the president of the parliament, and he was starting to think about being the president of the country. At least that's what people around him were saying. And having leaks in your party and thinking about just how to get more power and forgetting the role that the positive and negative role that this party can play is like a crazy position to have. And here in Nahda, of course, it has been victimizing itself after the coup, but the popular support was lacking. We saw demonstrations, but the institutions, people, I mean, I'm not here as a spokesperson of the people, but we didn't feel that much regret for the parliament being dismissed. And basically people felt that the political actors were having their own arguments very far from their concerns.
Irrelevant to their daily lives.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And yeah, so Nahda is one of the most important institutions in the country, and I've just exposed how it screwed itself. But there are also two other institutions that are really important, which are the UGTT and the labor union, and the UTICA, the bosses union.
Well, I was going to ask about them because in previous crises, they've managed to mediate between the conflicting parties and somehow find a resolution. But this time, have they been absent? Have they been unsuccessful? Where are they?
So for the last year or so, the Tunisian General Labor Union, the UGTT, has tried to play a role. Clearly, it has been like meeting the president Kais Saied a lot of times. And the same holds true for the bosses union, UTICA, which stands for the Tunisian Union of Industry, Commerce and Crafts. So before July 25th, UTK and UGTT have had regular meetings with the president, and both organizations' leaders made common declarations where they expressed their concern over the degradation of the economic and political situation. And they were proposing different settings or different ways to lead a national dialogue. But Saied was not that responsive. And after the election, here maybe a quick reminder that after the election of Kais Saied in 2019, the UGTT was somehow in a cold relationship with Carthage, because the elected president had clearly questioned the intervention and the role of intermediary bodies, whether they are parties, union, associations, or any other kind.
He didn't find them necessary.
Yeah, so as I described earlier, he thinks about expressing the will of people directly without intermediaries. And that's why the relationship between the unions and the president at the beginning was like
frosty.
And yeah, yeah, please go on.
It seems that perhaps some of the most significant opposition that Saied is facing is what he's confronting now as a consequence of the measures he took with respect to the Supreme Judicial Council. And there seems to have been already quite a bit of pushback from the judges and legal institutions on this. Do you consider this significant?
So what I saw, I mean, I've been following the news and having some interviews with people in Tunisia, and clearly the demonstrations of judges after the announcement of the dissolution of the High Judicial Council, the dismissal of the High Judicial Council, there's clearly an opposition, and there is a vocal opposition that we can hear from different judges' unions and from the institutions of the High Judicial Council itself, just to have a clearer view on how this council works. It has 4 components. So the administrative judges have their assembly, the financial judges, meaning the Court of Auditors, theirs, and the normal judges, they have their own. And the 4th institution inside the High Judicial Council is the General Assembly. So each one of these institutions has been calling for demonstrations, contesting what was the move of Kais Saied. And he published a few days after this announcement a new decree where he said a temporary judicial council. Basically, this temporary judicial council is nothing but Kais Saied, president of Tunisia, decides of how this temporary judicial council will function.
Taking personal control of the judiciary, effectively. Complete control. And here it's important to ask the question, what is the role of this council? Because, I mean, this council is not taking judicial decisions, but it has the very sensitive role of the judges, the transfers, even the appointments, it doesn't validate. So the way the judges are appointed in Tunisia, I mean, moving a judge from a function, a court, or a grade is the responsibility of the High Judicial Council that is composed mainly of judges. So if you take this prerogative and give it to the executive branch, we will find ourselves again in the setting of the authoritarian rule of Ben Ali and Bourguiba, meaning that if you don't rule as I want, I can delay your promotion, or I can move you to a very far place where you won't be with your family. And I mean, I've been conducting interviews on this topic of the judges' movement or transfers for the last years in Tunisia. And surprisingly, when I asked judges, asking them, what would be the thing that you would like to change so that you can take decisions freely without any concern over retaliation? And the first question, surprisingly, was the judges' movement shouldn't be somehow done partly by the Ministry of Justice and then by the High Judicial Council. So it's a very, very effective and powerful instrument.
It is. It is. It has been used by what's his name, Zine al-Abidine Ben Ali, a lot. So this was an administrative decision, and so it was you could oppose it, but meanwhile, would you really oppose it because you know that you would lose your case? And this is a very dangerous point because I mean we were in let's say getting the situation of the judiciary was not that good. I mean, but instead of resolving the problems, what Kais Saied did is like dismissing the problem, and creating a bigger problem.
And finally, I'd like to ask you, despite what you said earlier, I would very much like to get your prognosis on what you view as the next developments in the crisis in Tunisia. Has Saied reached too far, or has he become too entrenched to be successfully challenged?
So when I was preparing for this interview, I've been watching a lot of his recent speeches. And when I rewatched them, what I felt is that Saied isn't controlling the agenda anymore, meaning that he takes a decision and then this, like the dismissal of the High Judicial Council, and then there is an outrage and there are demonstrations, international community reacts and publish common communiques between the G7 or plus countries, and Saied organizes a meeting with his foreign affairs minister to talk about this point. So, and he was clearly angry and not, let's say, not in a very self-controlled mode. So this is not the only instance. There are a lot of instances where he would be reacting to the public topic going on in the public debate, the current public debate topic, and he would interact and answer the concerns of people on that, which is a reactive position. And so this is something that has changed because basically at a certain period, people were expecting Saied to take decisions, and not Saied was not reacting to what people were saying or doing. So this being said, there are other challenges that the country will be facing. The first one is the economic one, because economically speaking, what we can say is that the discourse of national sovereignty, so dear to Kais Saied, has not been translated into political terms. And what we could ask is, what are the things that changed, economically speaking, since he took the full power and the full control of the institutions? And the answer is quite nothing. Nothing has changed in the major economic orientations. Concretely, the neoliberal model of a reformist discourse narrative based on austerity, the reduction of the role of the state.
That remains unchanged.
That remains unchanged. And I mean, the narrative maybe has changed, but concretely, Tunisian authorities have been knocking on the doors of creditors, potential creditors, and potential donors. So the first visit abroad that the newly appointed Najla Bouden, the newly prime minister of Tunisia, the first visit she made was to Saudi Arabia, asking for financial support, but she just had promises, and again, are negligible results. That's exactly what Hisham Mashishi, her predecessor, did before in June 2021. So calling on the knocking on doors of the Gulf states or on the international financial institutions clearly shows that there is not a big deal, economically speaking, and that's very.
And it's not an economic strategy. So
at all. And
and
basically, yeah.
so I will actually conclude with one further question.
Yeah.
And given what you've just said, is again, as I think this interview also demonstrates, is that news about Tunisia tends to be dominated by its political process. But it's also clear that for most Tunisians, the priority is resolving the country's economic, at least as much, if not more so, than its political crisis. And so the question for you is, do you think it's possible to address them separately, or are their resolutions dependent upon each other?
For me, it's clear economic problems are political problems. Mm-hmm. And here again, we missed, Tunisia missed a lot of opportunities to get rid of the burden of its debt. We're getting to the 100% GDP equivalent debt. So we are indebted as much as the wealth we produce in 1 year, which in itself could be, other countries are more indebted if we take that ratio. But this is meaningful for us because we are not as strong as France or Japan or the US, and we don't have sovereignty over our currency, and we are indebted in foreign currencies. We missed the opportunity of COVID-19 to ask the creditors to have whether to cancel or to postpone the repayment of debts. Yeah. We missed the opportunity of the revolution in 2011 to do so. And we missed again the opportunity, maybe Kais Saied missed the opportunity to say, okay, after July 25th, he would have said, creditors, we are in a hardship now. We cannot, we must, prioritize the vaccines, the health sector, the education, the infrastructure, the redistribution of the very little wealth we have. So we need a year off, 2 years, 3 years. We need more investments in investment, not in the way in FDIs, but money that would be managed by Tunisians regarding their priorities and not the priorities and conditionalities of the international financial institutions. We miss those opportunities. And we are spending more and more on debt service and on the security services, the Interior Ministry and the Defense Ministry. I'm not saying that being in a safe place is, in a safe country is not important, but the issue is that they are being safe and hungry is not the best setting.
It's not a solution.
Yeah. And just, there is no silver line, unfortunately, in the end of this interview, particularly as today the policemen were announcing a demonstration because they have delays in some part of their salaries. Mm-hmm. And the judges are demonstrating, and the people against the coup are demonstrating. And there are, we're not an island living on the moon. We are also facing what's going on in Ukraine, for example, or what could go on, what would happen in Ukraine is influencing us, since Ukraine is one of the main providers of grains to Tunisia, and we have no alternatives. And even there are some shortage of bread, and people are lining to get their bread. So I'm not here trying to live like to concern people or to create a sort of urgency to say that the situation is going in the wrong direction. But clearly we have to, the situation is again unstable. And by unstable, I also mean unsustainable. How things will go on, who will overtake or not overtake power, clearly we don't know. What is sure is that the elections that are supposed to happen in the end of the year, or the presidential elections supposed to happen in 2024, will be very important a reality check for us, because we would know if people still believe in that, and if the leaders can still hold their power until that moment.
And those are dates then to keep an eye on. Mohamed Haddad, thank you very much for sharing your time and insights with Connections. And we'll be back next week with a discussion on Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.